Yo, what's going on, gamers, coders, speedrunners, and all-around game enthusiasts? This is Joystick Justin here, and welcome to Devlog 3 for Project Adapt. So let's get right into it. I have made this world that I'm going to use to show the new things, but first, let's check out this. So this is slightly different from what we've seen before. So let's just give this world a random name. There's a seed. So if you played any game with world generation, you'll see that there's a seed. So if I choose to name this world 1, 2, 3, 4, and create that world. Here's what that world looks like. You're in the middle of a river, there's rocks there, and there's trees up there. And if I make another world, I'm going to name it 1, 1 just to differentiate it. With the same seed, you'll see you'll get the exact same world. Whereas if you didn't put in that seed, you'll get a different world. So if you put in the same seed, you'll get a different world. And so obviously if you make a world and you don't put a seed in, it'll generate a random seed for you and put that seed on the world. So here is the world I have set up to show you the new things in the game. So first of all, you might see the screen is a little bit dimmer. What's up with that? Well, here's what's up with that. So I have some stuff in here ready to smelt. There's a day-night cycle in the game now. So right now it's nighttime, so it's kind of dark. If I turn this on, you'll see it actually creates a light around itself. And so obviously I'm going to make it so that it doesn't cross walls, because it doesn't really make sense for the light to go across this wall. How can light cross a wall like that? I'm going to change the game to make it so that that doesn't happen. But the proof of concept is there. You can see it creates a circle of light around itself. And the max light level is 10, so that means it can make a radius of 10. And so this guy turned off because he had nothing else to smelt. So machines automatically turn off when they have nothing left to smelt. So let's show the new machines, because before we had the LESU, the storage unit for energy, and we had these coal generators, and they created the energy. So the first thing you might notice is there's this I/O thing. So what is I/O? It allows you to control how energy flows through a machine. You can see right now, we'll just watch this, it's fading. We're fading to being brighter. So nighttime is ending, and you can watch the screen getting brighter right now. If you rewind the video, just hit the back arrow key, you'll see that there was, the light level was lower. So now it's daytime. So there's the day-night cycle. So this controls how electricity flows to the machine. So each side of the machine has an arrow beside it. So this means in all directions except for the bottom, energy goes out. This means energy can go out or in depending on how much energy he has versus how much energy is in the wire. So I like it to just send energy out. And the same thing happens here. So I have it set up so that energy comes in from this wire, which is the generators sending energy in, and energy goes out, the left side. So now we're ready to make a machine. So the machine is going to need gold. So the other thing is we have iron pickaxes now. I don't think that they were in the last devlog, so that's the crafting recipe for an iron pickaxe. The only difference is this guy can mine aluminum and gold. The stone pickaxe can't because stone is not strong enough. Yeah, so also you might have just witnessed there's a new inventory management system. So before there was, you highlight an inventory slot and then you click another one and it switches, but now you grab an item and it sticks to your mouse, and if you click another slot it switches stuff out. It does that kind of cool thing. And if you middle click, it'll split the stack in half. So you can see we're splitting in half. Obviously if the number's not an even number, it'll split and leave the extra item in your like attached to your mouse. If you right click, it'll put one item down. If you hold right click, it'll put one item down in all the slots you right clicked. And it works where if you hold right click multiple times, it'll put one extra item every time you right click. And I just added that one today and it took a bit of time, but yeah. So, and the same thing works in the crafting window. You can hold right click to put items in each slot of the crafting window as well. So the new machine, there's your crafting recipe. What the heck is that? Now I would like to change the way some of the inventory icons look, but this is a refiner. So what is a refiner? Let's put it down. It uses energy. So let's say you take an energy, and I'm going to add machines along this wall. So you take in energy from that side, and you send energy out from the left side. So what is a refiner supposed to do? Well, let's put items in there and turn it on. So what the refiner does is, you can see there's a little animation. It's basically crushing down the ore and refining it. So it makes these refined pieces of ore. Now we can turn it off. I just hit the off button so we stop wasting energy. And you make these refined pieces of ore. Now if you throw those into a furnace, you'll get 1 item per ore. So what happened before was that, let's grab just raw ore from over here. Let's grab some raw copper ore from the mining dimension. And if I throw that raw copper ore into a blast furnace, it'll take 3 ore. So let's, you can see, so it took 1 refined lithium ore and made 1 piece of lithium. Whereas if I do this, it took 3 copper and made 1 copper ingot out of that. Whereas if I take a piece of copper and put it in here, turn it on, it crushes it down and gives you 1 for 1. So basically what's happening is, it costs 3 here, it costs 3 ore to make 1 ingot here. If you refine it and then smelt it, you get 1 for 1 instead of 3 for 1. So it's more efficient with what you get out of it. So refiner is one of the first things you're going to want to make, and it just costs a little bit of energy. So the lithium energy unit has lowered its energy amount, and if you just set a machine to start running, it'll just start draining energy. So you can see the bar slowly losing until it turns off. So it'll take a little bit of time. The time it takes to do 1 cycle, it'll do a cycle, see if it can smelt anything, and if there's nothing there to smelt, it'll turn the machine off all by itself. So the machines turn off by themselves. You're not going to waste energy all the time. The generators are the other one who don't do that. So you have to be careful of the generators. And that's going to encourage you to use different energy sources once I add new energy sources. So let's smelt these. And I just want to check, what's the crafting recipe for this next thing? A heating coil is the next thing I'm going to want. So let's make that. So I think the crafting recipe is something like this. So I'm going to need more iron first. And I don't have much iron. So let's go grab some iron. So a heating coil is, it's just going to be a crafting ingredient. You can't place it down, you can't do anything with it. You straight up use it to craft other items. So I just have to go mining really quick and take some iron from the local cave. And the heating coil is going to be used to make an electric furnace. So that's another machine that we've added that uses energy. So let's just grab a bunch of stuff. Let's grab some coal too, because we'll probably need it, and coal is hard to come by, and we need it to generate electricity. Copper, aluminum. I don't know if I have uses for aluminum yet, but I'm just gonna grab it, because why not? And gold for sure too. Okay, we've grabbed enough. Hopefully this is enough for me to show you everything else that's left in the game. And it's becoming nighttime again, so I really just think that the ambience of the game is really cool now that there's a nighttime and there's lighting. I think that it looks really cool. So there we go. Turn this guy on. And I think I want another one, to be honest. I want another refiner, because this is going to take a while just sitting here watching stuff smelt. And we're going to need more coal. So I think that after this smelting operation happens, we'll be able to craft the heating coil. And the heating coil is going to be used to craft the electric furnace. So this is the crafting recipe, I believe. Not that, and there you go. Craft. No, it seems like that's not the crafting recipe. Is it using gold instead? No. So what is the crafting recipe? What is 31? So if I know iron is 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. It's a copper wire. Okay. Interesting. Craft. So there's your heating coil. And make 4 of them. And then if I want to make the, what's the crafting recipe for the electric furnace? So it's the heating coils. Okay. So I just need a little bit more iron. So let's grab some iron. Inventory management is still not perfect, and I'm hoping to still make a few more changes. But then the crafting recipe should be something like this. I'm going to need a little bit more wire. And there we go. And here's coils. And boom. Craft. There is your electric furnace. So let's throw this down right here. And now we can use electricity. We can use electricity instead of coal to smelt down items. So let's do something like this. And we seem to be running out of energy again. So let's do this. Turn you on. Turn you on. If you look back in the video, you'll see right there for a second this guy turned off because he ran out of energy. Now this guy is full, and let's smelt some aluminum. Turn you on. He creates light around him too. And there you go. So now we're using electricity instead of the coal over here. And obviously the coal is coming from the electricity is coming from coal, but we're using electricity, and it is a little bit faster. Its smelting operations take a little bit less time than the blast furnace. So there you go. Let's see what else I can show you. So I don't know if I mentioned this yet. The electricity, it can transfer across chunk borders properly now, and I didn't even know that was an issue before. But if energy tried to cross a chunk border, it just wouldn't work. So I fixed that now. And there you go. So now we're getting a lot more ingots for the ores. So here's another thing. You've probably been staring at this. What is this? This is a cabinet. It's straight up just it's an item storage device. Here's a crafting recipe for it. Makes a cabinet. And let's throw the cabinet in this corner, and there you go. You got your items. So I'll store my metals in here. Lithium's technically metal as well. So there you go. So what else can I show you? What else is new? So I've shown you the I/O system. Let's take energy in from that side and go out that side. If I add more machines along this line, there you go. So there's really not much else for me to show you in this update. It did take a long time. The day-night cycle is a big one. And we have 2 new machines that use electricity. So yeah, I think that's really cool. There's one more item I haven't shown you. And I don't know if this item was there before, but it's here now. I believe it's copper and iron. And I think what it is if you put copper in the middle and surround it by iron. There it is, crafting an upgrade tier 2. So then now you have a 3x3 crafting inventory instead of the tiny 2x2. If you're standing near an anvil, you get a bigger one. But yeah. So let's just make sure. So quick review. The power system has been completely changed. The code for sending electricity between electrical machines has been optimized and changed so that the electricity goes where you want it to go. And then there's obviously the I/O for the machines. That's this thing where you can specify how energy moves throughout the machine. We've had the refiner electric furnace, what I've shown you here. This refiner is wasting energy because kind of wasting energy, not exactly wasting energy. Yeah, and then like I said, it fixed the bug that causes electricity not to go across chunk borders. That was just a bug that I realized I was trying to set up an energy system, and energy wasn't going to my machines, and I was like, what's happening? And it wasn't, yeah, the code wasn't detecting energy setting through the machines properly across chunk borders. And then, yeah, out of the day-night cycle, out of the lighting system. And there's another issue. And so I found this issue when I was trying to set up the crafting recipe for the electric coil. This crafting recipe. Originally, the crafting recipe did not have, it was not set up with the copper coil, the copper wire up here. But now I changed it to that because of this issue. So what happened was, if I wanted to have a crafting recipe, say, what if the coil, I wanted it to be like this instead? The code was set up in a way that it wouldn't be able to understand this crafting recipe, because it plays when it looks in the crafting inventory, it plays with empty slots a little bit differently from slots with an item in it. So when it sees that it starts in the top left corner of the inventory and just scans across, and once it sees an item, it says, is there a crafting recipe here? So if there's no item here, it skips that and goes here, and then checks here onwards, and it ignores what's to the left. So if you try to have a crafting recipe that needs iron here, it would start here and be like, oh, well, your recipe is wrong because it didn't even, it's not even checking the items over here. That's basically what was happening. Long story short, you had to have an item in the top left slot of your crafting window. And now I've fixed that glitch, so a crafting recipe like this theoretically should be possible now. So yeah, that was a little issue that was in the game. And yeah, so like if you wanted to have the axe recipe be something like this instead, it's possible now instead of what it was before. So that was just a small issue. So that's really all there is for this devlog. The next plan for the game is doing a crafting overhaul. So what that means is adding something like when you put in a crafting recipe, say if you wanted to craft an axe, there'll be a slot somewhere that tells you what the result of that crafting recipe is going to be. So we'll have something like that, and then there'll be a crafting book, which means as you move forward through the game and unlock bigger and bigger crafting windows, you'll unlock items in your recipe book. And I think I'm going to call it blueprints instead of recipe book, because that seems like I'm just stealing from Minecraft. But yeah, that'll allow the player to not have to memorize all the crafting recipes. They can go into their blueprints, and as long as their crafting window is big enough for the crafting recipe to be made, then it'll throw in the correct items and tell you how to make them. The other thing I want to do is select how many items you want to craft. So let's say I wanted, if I wanted 2 axes here, I have to hit craft 2 times, and then I'll craft them. So I'm going to set up a little selection thing right below the crafting window that you can change how many you want to craft. So you can click the craft button once to make 5 different items, for example. There'll also be a button for craft instead of hitting C. C will still be an option. I'll leave that as a keyboard shortcut, but there'll be a button on the screen as well that allows you to craft. Otherwise, there is music that has been developed for the game, or is still in development. My buddy who makes music has made me the first song, and it sounds really good. So I'm excited to have music coming to the game soon. But it's not ready yet. There's one song that I have and I have access to, and I've heard it, and I can, if I wanted to, I could add it to the game. But I've decided I'm not going to add it until I have more of the music, because the ambient music for the mining dimension is all that's in the game right now. And I want there to be ambient music as well in the overworld. So the game is starting to feel a little bit cozy. If that it sounds weird, but that's the way I would describe how the game seems right now. So before I go, I'm just gonna Don't have enough items to craft this. Not enough iron. Dang. What? Oh. Wait, what? I threw the wrong thing in there. Whoops. Yeah, so I think that's all I can say about the game so far. Thank you for watching Devlog 3. Before we go, I'm just going to go through a little bit of what the code looks like. So if you're interested in the code, you can stay for this part. If you like what you've seen, that's the game development so far, then you can go right now. If you want to see how the code works, stay for it. So let's talk about that crafting thing that I talked about. So the idea, so here is what a crafting looks like. So for a heating coil, each of these numbers represents an item. So 31 is the item ID for the copper wire, and then this these are 22 is it's the ID for the iron ingot. So this is what the crafting recipe. This is what the crafting recipe looks like with the numbers put in. And then there's shaped crafting recipes and there's shapeless crafting recipes. So for the sharp stone, you need an ID 1, which is just stone, and you need 2 of them. So if I had, say you need also in the crafting recipe you want ID 9, which I believe, if I check the inventory items, ID 9 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, a door. So if you wanted to have a door in the recipe, and let's say you're making a double door, you want 2 doors, then that tells you that you're going to need 2 of ID 1, which is stone, and 2 of ID 9, which is a door. And then it doesn't matter where they are in the crafting inventory, it'll just slap them together and craft whatever you're trying to craft. So for shaped crafting, with the issue where if there's an item in the top left slot, it wouldn't. If this was a 0, it wouldn't work. That has been fixed simply by this little bit of code here. It says where is the first item in the crafting table. So let's say this is your crafting recipe, and there's a 0 here. It says, okay, so the first item is actually 1 forward. So instead of it starts with it being 0, and then it says, okay, so it looks at the item ID. So this is this corresponds to this array, this array right here, and it looks at the first row because there's going to be an item in here somewhere. If all of these are 0s, then you wouldn't have this row in the crafting recipe, and you would just delete that part of the code. So it looks in here and it says, okay, where's the first item that's not a 0? That's what this little for loop does. And once it finds that, it'll say the first item equals wherever that item is and stop the loop, and you'll stop checking for it. And then it uses that over here. So it just uses that and moves numbers around based on where the first item is, and that's enough. That all in itself is enough to fix that issue, and I've tested it and it works. So that was one of my issues. We're going to close this without saving, because I don't know if I've left changes. Inventory management. This is a big one. It was so inefficient before, it's crazy. I had like 3 or 4 loops that did this loop like 4 times. Now I have it twice, and literally it's just one for your inventory, moving items around in your inventory, and one for moving around stuff in the container. And really the difference is that variables are named different, so I have to use different variable names to define where things are going. And you also have to have this extra line of code, these 2 extra lines of code that say if you're in your inventory and there's a container on the screen, then you can start looking into the container and seeing if you can move items around. And then also get valid slots. So if you're looking in the game, there are certain containers that have more slots than others. This is a world that I've been playing in to actually test the game. So this container has this is the biggest size container that is allowed in the game right now, and I can change that, but this is what's allowed so far. It's a 5x5. But there are other containers that have smaller inventories. Like this has 2 and 2. And over here, this guy only has It has one inventory slot. So what do you do with that? It seems so that whoops. Okay, never mind. We're wasting energy here, though. Turn that off. Turn that off. Yeah, so what do you do when there's less slots? Like if I go over here and try to click here, this would be a slot if I was in the cabinet, but there's no slot here. So what that does is there's a variable in the game that's for valid slots. And each container has its valid slots set up. So those are two things you have to check for a container. And then so that's why there's two loops for all of them. And so there's right clicking, which is just you hit right click and you start moving items around. And then there's middle click for splitting items in half. There's a little bit more code that goes into that because you have to make sure you're not, the max stack size is 50. You can have 50 items in a stack. You have to make sure you accommodate for that. And if you're trying to if your stack has 40 items in it and you grabbed a stack of items that is 50, you can try to right click that. Well, half of 50 is 25. You're trying to add 50 into 40, but then that stack is going to go way above 50. So you have to correct for that. And then there's that kind of thing happens again for containers. And then there's left clicking, which is just grabbing an item onto kind of attaching it to your mouse. And there's two loops for that in containers. And there's a few issues here with arrays, where, so if you say, okay, so each stack has a little bit of information about it. So it has the ID of the item and then this little 16 that tells you how many items are in the stack. So if you grab this, you're grabbing an array of items and attaching it to the mouse. And that array currently has two values, just the ID and the stack for the items. And so you have to do a copy of it instead of saying grabbed item equals this guy. Instead of saying just grabbed item equals and then putting this line of code, you have to say a copy of, because otherwise you're going to make this be the same object. And if they're the same object, trying to move one will move all the others. Or the bigger issue was if I did something like this and started moving things around, then hitting the delete button would have deleted this stack as well. And it's really hard for me to explain that correctly, but that's kind of what would happen. So that was the inventory management. I've rearranged a little bit more. So in the core, there's player input. Player input is it's a core thing. It just has key input and mouse handler. But because having this many classes was a little bit over the top. And then here's lighting. So the thing that I've done for the code, if your processor, your container has a light source, then it extends this interface, and the interface has this method in it. I learned that you can put default, and then you can actually write the code for a method and interface, which I think is really cool. It allows me to have almost two abstract classes being extended at the same time. And what I mean by that, so here's processors, and I've changed this from containers to processors because I thought there are going to be some things that aren't containers but still have to process things. Eventually I'll make it so that you can plant acorns, and they'll have some processing that they'll have to do. So they will be a processor. They'll be processing how long it's been since they've been planted so that they know when to grow into a tree. And with that, it's not a container. Like if you go and right click it, you're not gonna be able to put items inside of an acorn. That just doesn't make sense. So, but it's still gonna have to process stuff. So I've changed this from processors to containers, and there's so for example, blast furnace makes a light. So let's compare, instead of comparing blast furnace, let's compare the electrical things. So electric furnace and refiner. So refiner extends electronic. It's an electronic item, but it doesn't create a light source. Whereas an electric furnace, it's an electronic and it implements a light source. So if we go down to tick, or render actually, it seems, and I might need to move this from render to tick because, yeah, but there's your add light. And so basically what this does is we have in the daytime cycle, which is this guy, this controls the daylight cycle, it has a linked list of all the light sources. And so you're trying to add to that linked list. And so the linked list, its type, the type for the linked list is lights data, which is this class, and it stores the name of the light, its position in the world, and the light level that that light is trying to produce. So with that, every single time the game renders, it tries to add the light to the screen, or tries to add the light to that light list. And so what happens in here is you're saying, okay, let's make a light, let's give it the name and all this information, and then we're going to say, okay, so let's take a look. Does this light already exist in the daytime cycle light sources? So it goes through all of the items in this linked list, and it says, okay, so if the name of that item, so we look at every single item in the linked list, and we say if any of them have the same name as the light we're trying to add, then return. What that means is we're just going to exit this method without doing anything. If we get through all of this linked list, this for loop goes through every item. This is called the for each loop. It's different from what you have where you have like for int I equals 0, I is less than 2, I++, you're going to loop 2 times through this thing. This loops through every single item in the game's daytime cycle light sources. So this linked list goes through every item there and says if any of them have this, if this guy's name is the same as a name that's already in the list, then return, because that means, well, you're trying to add a light source that's already there, so like you don't have to do that. Just leave the method, don't do that. If you get through all of the items in the daytime cycle light sources and you don't find one with the same name, then add it and tell the daytime cycle to reload the light sources. And so that'll render the light levels. Yeah, I could keep talking about the code, but this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to choose to stop right there. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching, and this has been Devlog 2. There's a lot more in the game now. In this game, I'm almost at the point where I'm willing to throw it on the market. Like, it is playable, but there's really not that much content yet. You can probably, if you really play the game for a long time, you're probably going to get, you're not going to get more than, probably not going to get more than 5 minutes out of the game before you've crafted everything and you've done everything that you can do. So, yeah, but the other thing I'm trying to think about is adding entities. Maybe squirrels go and climb up a tree, or you'll find a pig or a deer wandering through the forest or whatever. Yeah, and I need health. Your character will be able to die, and I'll have to implement that. A big thing that I still have to implement is items being dropped on the ground, because if your player dies, I want it to drop all its items. You have to go back and grab your items, and that's not going to be it's straight up not possible with any of the code that I have. When I break a tree and you see that it drops the wood and the acorns and that kind of thing, it's just putting those on the screen for effect, just to make it look like you're grabbing something from the tree and you're putting it into yourself. But what you'll actually notice is if I go and break a tree, you'll see that, I guess we're breaking, well, let's go into the other world. If I go and break one of these rocks, you'll see it adds to the inventory before they even reach me. It says added 3 stone, and then it's there. All right, so I have 10 stone there, 13, 16, and the items haven't even gotten to me yet. So that's just for effect. The items flying towards you is just for effect. It's just for fun. So I have to make it so that items can be dropped on the ground. They actually sit there and stay there, and I have to save a file that says where all the items are. So that's a big thing that I still have to add to the game. But yeah, so thank you all for listening. Thanks for watching. The game is progressing very well, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. And don't forget to keep on gaming.